This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring a discussion on strengthening semiconductor ecosystem and its contribution to the Indian economy. The participants are Anurag Batra, senior journalist, and Dhawan, anchor.
Hello and welcome to our program. India's semiconductor industry is actually a sunrise industry looking at global and Indian requirements. Public-private partnership in terms of investment and government initiatives are on the increase. We are delighted to have in the studio with us IT expert Anurag Batra, and we'll be talking today on strengthening the semiconductor ecosystem and its contribution to the Indian economy. Anurag, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So when we talk about the semiconductor ecosystem, what does this ecosystem include?
First of all, why do we need semiconductors? They are the invisible force around our life. The computer through which we are doing this conversation has a semiconductor chip. The phone that you may be using has a semiconductor chip. The car's electronic panel has a semiconductor chip. And I can go on to industrial devices, where it's a power plant, it's a hospital, it is a hotel, it is an education. They all have controls, smart cities, totally controlled through electronic design systems which have chips in it. And according to research, the semiconductor industry in India is expected to reach $8 to $10 billion revenues next year. It will reach 11 billion in the next 1 year, 2 years. And government support is growing it. And also there is foreign investments coming in. And whether it's the indigenous semiconductor industry is seeing the development design of fabs, ATMP, all kinds of whole spectrum capabilities. So really, it is important from a strategic standpoint. It is important from a future standpoint in terms of bringing the dependability on certain countries and certain vendors. Like 20 years back, we would talk of defense. 10 years back, we would talk of energy. These days, we talk of semiconductors in the same breath. So it's so important that the President of America last year passed the Semiconductor Act to build capabilities. It has a tactical intent and it has a strategic intent. The strategic intent is not to be dependent on anyone. It also means data. So making sure that there's no surveillance, building our own capabilities. And when any ecosystem develops, 40 years back, Maruti came as a car. And the ecosystem of vendors, OEM manufacturers around it grew. So similarly here also, Tata is a very credible player. They've helped in nation building. They've announced 1,25,000 crores investment. So big companies, and the impact is huge in building the ecosystem and so on and so forth. It is a very strategic impact will be seen in the next few years. And I'm glad like India is trying to build manufacturing capabilities in various sectors in defense. Here also it is critical that India has its own supply chain and an ecosystem.
Sometime back, Anurag, there were conversations of supply chain issues, and the whole global economy was actually reacting to shortage in supply chain issues in terms of semiconductors. How are we positioned today in terms of our own needs? And then slowly moving on to, and we'd like your views on that, how can we enable India's emergence as a global hub for electronics manufacturing and design?
The pandemic underscored the importance of self-reliance, prompting every country to rethink their semiconductor strategies. The microchip shortage also resulted from a surge in demand, driven by the digital shift caused by COVID-19. It affected the consumer electronics and related industry, and hence also the demand for remote work and flexi work has grown, which means there are more devices. So recognizing the need to reduce its dependence on imported semiconductor, the Ministry of Electronic and Information Technology has unveiled a 10 billion commitment towards the India semiconductor mission. And the global semiconductor landscape is undergoing a profound transformation with countries like Taiwan, South Korea. Taiwan has TSMC, which is a very large player. South Korea has Samsung. And United States have Intel and AMD. These four players, TSMC, Samsung, Intel, AMD dominate the industry. We need Indian players in this sector. So really, also the COVID exposed the vulnerabilities in the global supply chains. Shutdowns and disruptions reverberated across industries, making it clear that diversifying the sources of critical components is imperative for us as a country. And also under the Prime Minister Modi, our ambition in every sector are big. And this government and this Prime Minister thinks ahead. While we are catering to today and now, we're also thinking ahead as a country. So really, India has witnessed a remarkable surge in electronic consumption in recent years. The Indian semiconductor industry is projected to achieve market value of a humongous, I mean, I'm not give you a number. There are estimates that range from 10 billion to 60 billion in the next 2 years. And as I said, India's heavy dependence on its supply from countries like China, Taiwan, South Korea, and Singapore exposed our vulnerabilities, disruptions like in the pandemic. Also, as you know, that there were 8 months delay on certain cars, certain phone models, because everything is a chip. And
Absolutely.
especially Taiwan is a producer which is responsible for over 60%. I don't think there is a war that is going to happen between Taiwan and China. But in eventuality, if it happens, what happens to the rest of the world? Because Taiwan does 60% of the production of the world semiconductor chips. Every sector is. For example, in 2022, just the semiconductor shortage created a loss of almost 170,000 units for Maruti Suzuki India. So really, the impact on various industries will be seen. For example, Micron Technology is investing upwards of $800 million in a facility in Gujarat. There is a design-linked incentive plan and large players aligned with the country, aligned with the government, aligned with India's growth.
Wanting to understand from you, when we talk of the semiconductor ecosystem and its contribution to the Indian economy, we also know that this will create highly skilled job opportunities to harness the country's demographic dividend. How well prepared are we in terms of educational institutions and educational courses to actually ensure high skill development takes place?
The institutions like the Semiconductor Laboratory, the Institute of Semiconductor Technology, and then various in colleges, in engineering colleges, there are centers of excellence. Some of our focus on semiconductor. But can I tell you, in the way that this government is tackling this industry, these efforts are not solely aimed at immediate outcomes. The government is sowing the seeds for future breakthroughs. Additionally, strengthening the supply chain by domestic manufacturing semiconductors with materials like silicon wafers, gases, and chemicals is enhancing self-reliance and securing the supply chain. As the ecosystem develops, the education and the talent pool for it will also naturally get developed.
In fact, of course, India's dream of becoming a semiconductor hub is not a new one. But I think hopes were really lifted.
We are moving from potato chips to silicon chips.
Right, absolutely. But it was in December 2021, and we'd like your views on that the government announced a production-linked incentive scheme, which was worth 76,000 crore rupees for the chip and display fabrication. So your comments on that, and where have we reached that in that so far?
See, these are very large investment. We have Tata's is the anchor, but we have to have the right partners. As I said, this is about strategic security. So such things take time. It is about the right companies. There is a limited pool of companies. And sometimes these things, the negotiation and collaboration and the joint ventures take time.
You spoke of collaboration and negotiation. In terms of technology transfer, how free do you think the world is in wanting to share such, because R&D is actually a country's domestic domain. Nobody wants to really share information that they really spent a lot of money on.
So that's why. So patents, basically it's a strategic imperative so that when we're in a war or even the growth of the country is not, suppose there is demand for digital devices is growing. So naturally, at some stage, the supply, already in India, the demand doesn't meet the supply. The supply doesn't meet the demand. So suppose there was shortage. Of course, India has helped in COVID. We've sent medicines and all, but I'm not sure every country will be charitable. So India is the best way to help others is to help yourself. So India is developing these capabilities, and I'm sure they'll be as the growth of connected devices in every sector grows, this will be very, very helpful.
We're also looking at, of course, a demographic dividend, but also a digital dividend. And today we see that the proliferation of the mobile phone, of technology, of digital transactions, payments has really, really permeated different strata of society. Do you see that our own being self-dependent, because we have a market and now we're looking at creating producers. So India by itself has so much of potential that I think a global reach would be an extra, but our inherent potential to tap production would be a big advantage.
Absolutely. See, as I said, we missed the bus on manufacturing overall because the Chinese were very competitive on price. We let them do whatever was good. The whole world, price competitiveness became, immediate profit became. But as we look at it, the government looks at in long term, this becomes very, very important. I started by saying we talk of defense, we talk of energy security, semiconductor security is equally important.
What, in your view, are some challenges that we need to look out for as we are taking this growth path?
I think we need to be very consistent. The law of compounding, we have to continue to build for the next 20 years, because while we are building this, the world is also, I talked about America, there are other countries that are also building these capabilities. So we'll have to be very competitive. It requires investments, and a government has to play the role of a market maker too.
And when we talk of, incentivization, you're looking at global competitive incentive packages to this industry and all this for ushering a new era?
Yes, absolutely. I'll tell you, any new industry takes 3 to 5 years to establish. As the ecosystem, the manufacturing will come up, then the production will come up, then the go-to market is parallelly happening, then the ecosystem of talent gets developed, ecosystem of service providers get developed, then the price points come down. So it is a process. The fact is, the train has left the station. So it will reach its destination.
You spoke about getting a pool of talent, and all this requires investment. There's a gestation period. How do you see India's, I think, global role we've spoken about, but a regional role? Because, India has been seen as a strong regional leader too.
We have a role. The Prime Minister sent the vaccine Maitri program, was very appreciated. We sent out vaccines. We are taking the digital public infrastructure to other countries. France is using UPI. So similarly, when we develop semiconductors, see, India as a nature is, we believe in the world is one family. So we believe guest is God. And we are a very good citizen as a country. If the world was, every country was a citizen, we are a good citizen. While we work on ourselves, we also give back to the overall ecosystem. So India's growth, India's capabilities is good. And can I tell you, something like this cannot happen if the world powers don't feel that India is the right place to develop these capabilities. So there is a lot of buy-in to shifting the supply chain to India.
I think you're absolutely right in terms of the trust that the world has, at least in some way, saying that India is not only a large economy, but a stable economy by and large. And I think when we look at ourselves in the future, we're also a human resource center, creating young people, capable people who can go across the world, actually, not only for employment, but to act as centers of creativity. How do you think that actually we can educationally excite and encourage young people to come into this industry?
No. Young people are going into areas like drone, space. So young people are going into these areas naturally. And that's why 30 years back, we started producing more engineers. That's why we've done well in IT. Earlier there was a services culture. Now we're building product companies. So all this is a natural progression. So bound to happen as the sector. So it is a natural development that will happen.
I think you made a very valid point earlier that everybody in the world is racing in this direction towards the different goalposts, and we really don't have the luxury of, taking our time, having long gestation periods. So investment and I think encouragement and interest, these are all factors that are really going to, actually this right time, give the shoulder up and push us in this direction so that we can become the global leaders that we want to become.
Absolutely. See, India's time has come. As I said, if the global leaders didn't want it, we wouldn't be having these buy-ins from very large players. And it's a happy day for India. It's a big day for India. So I'm sure next when we talk, we as a country would have taken another step toward truly becoming a leader in every domain.
Right, absolutely. Well, Mr. Anurag Batra, thank you so much for coming on to our program. It was wonderful speaking.
Pleasure is absolutely ours, and look forward to more interaction.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on strengthening semiconductor ecosystem and its contribution to the Indian economy. The participants were Anurag Batra, senior journalist, and Dhawan Lal, anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.